This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, hello, and welcome to our SSR TechBytes session. Thanks for your patience, and thank you for joining us. I'm Katie Austin, Marketing Manager at SSR, and before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to run through. I'm gonna advance the slide here, I think. All right, there we go. All right, you can select your audio preferences in the settings tab. If at any point you have a poor connection, you can use the dial-in number for this webinar or vice versa and connect to the audio through your browser. Please keep your line muted during the presentation and feel free to post any questions you have in the chat throughout the session. And we'll address those questions, as many of those questions as possible during the questions and conversations session at the end. This session is being recorded, as you heard. We'll send you the recording and the slide deck for your reference before the end of the week. And for those of you who are not as familiar with SSR, we have been designing, implementing, and managing information technology strategies for small and mid-sized businesses for more than 20 years. We currently serve more than 200 clients, providing the full spectrum of total IT services to reduce risk, improve productivity, and support growth, including data visualization and business intelligence assessments, design, development, and implementation. We are a dual shore company with 24/7 support capabilities, and security standards are a key component of any technology strategy nowadays. And not only are our data centers SOC 2 certified, we are also SOC 2 Type 1 certified. Finally, we're proud to have received several awards as technology service provider and an employer consistently over the past several years. We actually just hung up our latest MSP 500 plaque on the wall the other day. Now that you know a little more about SSR, I'll tell you a little more about our speaker today. Raj Mutpandian leads our advanced software solutions team. He has more than 20 years of development experience, and that experience includes working with SMBs, applying know-how from his work at Fortune 500 companies. He's accomplished in leading product strategy, as well as the development and implementation processes from start to finish. Raj lives with his wife and 3 kids in Brookfield. He's a runner, and now he's a kayaker. So without further ado, I'll turn the session over to Raj to tell us data to jumpstart pandemic recovery. Raj?
Thank you, Katie. Welcome, everyone. And good morning. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate the opportunity to share our experience with you. We'll give a couple of seconds for you to look at this, the image on the right-hand side. And as you can see, there is no magic button to save money. It needs intention, consistent effort needed to the area of focus for improvement. So in our, we'll focus on 4 things: the power of data. We will look at a couple of examples and explore more on the power of data. Empowering your team. We'll go deep into the approaches and processes to empower your teams. Prioritizing your data. So we'll show you the tools that we use internally at SSR and also the tools that we work with customers. And then the million-dollar question, how to get started. We will share our experiences with you on how we do it with our customers and where to start. And next slide, please. So I'm a big fan of sports. I watch NBA, I watch all the sports you can think of. When it comes to NBA, this particular slide shares on the left-hand side, it shows data, the NBA shot selection. And the right-hand side shows the last couple of years. It's shows how the shot selection from players evolved in the last 10 years. Houston Rockets hired MIT geek like a few years ago. He analyzed the past data and created a process that informs two things: what they practice and how they play. What they found was that corner threes and shots closer to the net produced better results. Houston Rockets changed their playbook to incorporate their learning. They started winning, obviously. This change is not just a one team. The entire NBA adopted to that. Even NCAA now it's adapting to that concept of using data. If you look at like 10 years ago, the main focus was talent. The coaches focused on the talent, grow the talent, skill set, things like that. In the last 10 years, what Houston Rockets did kind of grew. It's not just a talent anymore. You need to have data tied to that. Of talent and data is a winning combination. And it's not just the Houston Rockets, the entire sports industry is adapting to that, and it's changing the way they play the game. The focus is on winning. Next slide, please. Similar to the NBA use case, businesses need to know which activities yield high results. What you see in this particular screen is the 10-year trend for SSR, our own growth. At SSR, our KPIs revolve around three key things: profitability, risk, and productivity. So these are the three things we focus on, all our KPIs, and the entire team is aware of those things. These are the three themes: profitability, risk, and productivity. Internally at SSR, the pandemic impact was limited because our KPIs, our company scorecard, we call it something like a company scorecard. It's like around 10 to 15 values we track on a weekly, monthly basis to create a visibility for our entire organization. And having that data in place, it started several years ago. In the last 6 months, we took it to the next level again. And it really helped us in the last couple of months when everyone stayed home. The impact was minimal because these KPIs and company scorecards are available to the team members, and we were able to communicate with our leadership team and also our team members. So both upstream and downstream, they get the visibility they need to understand how their teams are doing, how their organization is doing in general, so that the visibility was there. Our KPIs are straightforward. It's not like a rocket science. But at the end of the day, what was key was how you collect the data, how you keep the data up to date. Those are the things, how you share the data. Those were the key factors helped us to learn in the past few years to get to a stage where we are. When we started using the single source of data, it helped the entire organization making right decisions on their everyday life. So this is a great tool that we use at SSR. So at the end, we will show some examples that can help you see what we created for SSR. Moving on to the next slide, please. So we're moving on to the main part of the agenda here, the power of data. I would start with two questions. What are your departments tracking? Are there redundancies in data they are tracking? Those are the two things I would ask, or we ask at the start of every engagement with our customers. Looking at the current pandemic, organizations that had good understanding of which activities produce the most revenue were at greater advantage. They could see which revenue streams were still viable, which would produce the best results with the least effort. This is something Like I said earlier about SSR story, we pay attention to those things. We continuously go back and look at our scorecard and continuously tune up the process of what values we are tracking and what the KPIs we are tracking with a limited effort producing the best result. That's important as we recover from pandemic. The other thing is that, one shared view that incorporates everyone's contribution to the overarching goal. Three things I would call out. Holistic view covers overall organizational point of view. It's not just finance point of view or sales point of view. How can we bring the data in a way that everyone gets the picture of how the company is doing? The timely information is another key factor. If you want the data, you want the data now, not like a month later. Then you can make the necessary pivot you need to make during the pandemic, for example, what we are going through right now. The critical piece that I would say is accuracy of the data. If the data is not accurate, people don't trust the data, then it's just a data and it's not making any business impact. To make the right decision or make the right pivots you need to do. So to summarize, three things: view, timely information, accuracy of data. These, need to be incorporated as you create, or if you want to maximize the power of data. I'll share an example that one of the customers, there's a customer in Milwaukee, implemented with the help of us, our help, they were able to implement KPIs or dashboards for their sales team. They did that last year. Why I'm calling this out is they saw the real benefits in the last couple of months. It really added a value to the sales organization to use that dashboards and the KPIs that they created, part of working with us, to execute their business plan. Being remote, being not in the office, did not make any impact. We believe that influenced the president of the organization kind of gave a green signal to move forward and expand this to other parts of the organization. So they actually, a couple of weeks ago, they reached out to us and said, how can you help us with the factory operation related KPIs? So we are kind of working on that one as we speak. Next slide, please. So this particular slide, as you can see, it's more, it's very straightforward to just looking at this. I can expand more on this with my input. The power of data is a combination of motivation, a team or leadership motivation, and a single source of data. Having a fancy dashboard alone will not move the needle in your organization. Aligning everyone's motivation to the goal is key, especially during pandemic. In the case of motivation, everyone has different motives, right? So even if you take my team, we have, I have BAs, I have data analysts, I have engineers, software engineers, I have testers, everyone has, her motivation or his motivation. Some person focuses on learning new stuff. Some person gets excited about supporting a customer on existing systems. So everyone has different motivation, but at the end of the day, how can you align these positive energies and bring it together and channel that energy into a single focus, a single goal, a single mission in an organizational level? At SSR, we have something called gain share process. So it's basically on a quarterly basis, every full-time employees will get a share of the profit. The way the process works is basically the scorecard that I mentioned earlier. The scorecard allows our organization to see from top to bottom, upstream to downstream. Everyone can see how our company is doing. The key part is that what are they doing to contribute to the success of company in our organization. The profitability is the key. Like I said earlier, we focus on three things at SSR: profitability, risk, and productivity. Being a consulting company, we focus heavily on productivity to making sure that everybody is busy, producing a positive customer experience for our customers. At the same time, we pay attention to the profitability. And these themes are captured in our scorecard, and that reflects, and that's been communicated to our team members on a regular basis. A leadership team, we look at that on a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis. The team members have the same visibility. Motivation needs to be paired with accurate, timely, holistic data. That's something we covered earlier, and that empowers the team to do the right things. Without bringing your organizational data into a single view, a single source. So if you look at the presentation, the slide here, the left-hand side focuses on motivation, but the right-hand side, they need to work together. So the right-hand side talks about the fancy dashboard, but it needs to be a single source. It needs to be accurate. It needs to communicate in a timely fashion. The same thing we covered earlier, but we want to bring it together so that, we want to make sure that, it's clear when we roll it out to our team members. Another example I can give, in Madison Metro created a similar dashboard involving their own sales-centric challenges. I talked to him, I met him early part of last year, and I recently talked to him how it's going. When I was there last year, he was able to give me a real-time walkthrough of how he uses those dashboards and motivation combined to produce the positive end result. Basically, there was a sales member stop at the same time I was there, and both were talking about the sales region, how he's doing, and they're just going and doing a real-time, on the fly, looking at the data. They can see the holistic picture on the overall sales organization, and they can drill down to that particular individual's region. And the data was real-time. At the same time, the data was actual because the activities that the sales member was doing tied back to the data that we were showing in the dashboard. So when I talked to him recently, I've been reaching out to customers to just make sure that in the pandemic, and his answer was, overall, what we is a big value, like impact, the positive impact it created in the organization, whether it's upstream or downstream for his sales organization, he was able to execute the plan without any roadblocks. Next slide, please. Moving on to the next slide. So this is more focused on the empowering your team. Many companies experienced more disruption, communication gaps, technology gaps. Some of this will happen since so many more parts are moving. But if you have your data, your team should be able to see where the highest priority issues are and pivot faster. In the previous slide, we covered the example from the Madison customer. The data was in order, and they were, on the fly, they're making necessary decisions based on the sales progress. The data they can see on the fly, they're making the right decisions as they make progress going through this, the global pandemic. One of the key questions, I think I kind of vaguely touched a lot earlier, needs to be answered as you go deeper into this data journey. What's in it for me? Like I said earlier, everyone has different motivation. So this particular question, what's in it for me, needs to be addressed from upstream to the downstream, from the CEO of an organization to the junior intern who joined yesterday. Everyone needs to be part of this journey to understand, the things that the organization collect, the data or the KPIs we track, adding some value to the downstream person, also upstream person. And I want to go back to the first example I shared about the Milwaukee customer in Milwaukee. The executive, the senior executive, the CEO of the organization, the president of the organization, he understood the real value of having a sales dashboard, how it really enabled him to see the bigger picture of how his sales organization is executing the plan. But I believe he struggled to see the same when it came for the operational execution. Sales can sell all the things, but if the operation doesn't deliver on time, let's say they have, the supplier challenges. They can't get the parts they need to deliver what the promise made by the sales team. There were struggles, right? We all went through that supplier challenges in the last couple of months. So the summary here is the senior executive was able to see that for sales dashboard, but he was not able to do the same for operation. That created a major roadblock for them to execute the overall business plan for the company. And that's why they reached out to us a couple of weeks ago and said, you know what, team, can you guys help us to do the same thing for operational aspect? Getting the right data is a collective effort. It's not a one-man job. It needs a collective effort from different levels of an organization. So if you take the SSR example, when we create dashboard for like a scorecard for a company level, it's a combination of finance manager, operation managers, and like HR manager. Everyone plays a role in creating a holistic view that kind of serves the main purpose. Are we going on the right track? Are we executing the right plan, the plan that we started early part of the year? Do we have any challenges with the profitability? So from SSR point of view, that helped, and it's also helping our customers, same thing. You'll get more buy-in if you take the time to involve stakeholders. The key thing here is everybody, be accountable and buying into this process. Accountability are one of the key outcomes of this exercise. The cultural change is one of the, in my opinion, it's a phenomenal thing. If we can make them understand what is in it for me, explain the why aspect and explain how it can help them, then if they buy into the system, then it's very powerful to execute what you want to execute when it comes to creating a dashboard, creating a data-centric company. When you're digging into this process, don't be afraid to create a few things like redundancies in data capture, manual entry and duplicate entries, process inefficiency. So these are the things you're going to run into, or your team will run into. They're going to see this and they're like, you know what? Is there a better way to do it? It's basically walking through the current process, identifying the gaps, making sure that those gaps are being eliminated or fixed as you come up with the, the improved process or the future state. Next slide, please. Moving on to the next topic, prioritizing your data. Earlier we talked about the benefits of the data. In the future slides, we're going to focus on how to get it done. The step one of the process, this is something we all do, working backwards. So attending this meeting, we all execute different life, right? When I was a project manager, the same thing. I'm sure everyone did some project management. In my case, I'll give you a personal story. Here I built a fence in my backyard. It's a long fence. So to build a fence, I had to think, there is a end goal, and then I have to work backwards to understand what are the things I need. I had to do a gap analysis. When you build a fence, you have to look at materials, what materials I need, or what materials I already have, and what tools I already have, and I need to identify what aspects I need to buy to accomplish or reach this end goal. And I had to create a checklist based on the gap analysis I was able to complete. And the checklist is basically, in our case, when you create a data strategy, when you do the gap analysis, you had to create a strategy, like a plan. And that plan is nothing different than the plans you create for a garden, like a fence. So it's a similar thing. So when you create a gap analysis, as you can see in the screen, there are 3 questions I would ask. What information do I need to measure progress to the goal? What information do I have that meets the need? The last one is very important. What other information am I missing? Where I can get that information? So that's what I would do. That's what we do with internal processes at SSR. And that's what we coach our customers on. When you start doing the gap analysis, looking at these questions and ask the right questions like this to understand the current state and understand and define the gaps and create a strategy plan and move forward. The next slide, please. Continuing with the prioritizing of data, this is another million-dollar question. How do we know we chose the correct KPI? To be honest with you, I asked the same question as I was learning about this process several years ago. How do we know we could choose the right KPI? The simple answer is you got to start somewhere, right? Draw a line on the sand and just say, you know what, we're going to start somewhere. So this is where I want to bring an example that I had a factory trip. I visited a factory, one of the customers a couple of years ago, last year actually, early last year. And I saw the factory manager when he gave me the tour. One of the station, I saw this nice looking TV with a fancy dashboard there. So I asked him to walk through the journey he took and how he implemented this one with the help of SSR. So basically the way, when he started the company, when he joined the company, a few years ago, there was nothing there. And he was talking to one of his employee, and he asked at the end of the shift, let's say, the guy had they had 3 shifts. The first shift fellow at the end of this, let's call him Jim. So he asked Jim, hey Jim, how many you created, at the end of today? He said, I created 5 widgets. And then, the operation, the factory manager happened to have a small whiteboard. He wrote down number 5, Jim, number 5. And then the second shift fellow came, let's call him John. And he wrote down, he saw the number that Jim delivered 5, and then he's like, you know what? I'm gonna exceed. So you wrote down number 6 at the end. And then Michelle came back next morning and she wrote down number 7. So when the manager came back, when he talked to Jim again, the number already went from 5 to 7, and he was able to communicate to his team at the end of the day, having something visible really motivated the team to the next step. So it kind of drove the right behavior at the end of the day to improve the productivity and the delivery of what they deliver on a daily basis. And then initially he started with a simple Excel sheet, and then he was able to work with the SSR to create a nice Excel a dashboard. The SSR was able to help automating the process, and now he has this nice dashboard, and the team uses this on a daily basis to execute their operational goals. So moving on, I think I'm running out of time here, so I gotta speed up a little bit, guys. moving on to the next slide, continuing with the prioritizing your data. This particular slide is more easy to read. I don't need to, we will share the slide with you guys, and you'll be able to capture these things, and you apply that in your organizations. So overall, this slide communicates, going back to the question, how do we know we chose the correct KPIs, and tying that back to, the benefits that you will see that will actually indicators that will help you understand you're going in the right direction. Moving on to the next slide. Prioritizing your data. So this is something, as you can see in the slide, we use this tool with our customers, and we use that at the SSR too. Basically, as you can see, there are three Excel sheets here. The first one focuses on more high level business use case. The example I can give is we want to grow the sales by 30% for this 2020. So that can be the business case level. For that one, I would look at the investment aspect and the return. So if you want to track this KPI, you have to have some kind of a as you build these KPIs, you need to understand the success criteria and the value that's going to produce. That's a step one. The second step is, for that particular business use case, you need to create a sub use cases. For example, do you want that data to be manual versus automated? Do you want getting the data from, let's say it's getting the data from multiple sources. Do you want to integrate them into a single warehouse where you can host the data in one place? Then you get that, everyone can go to one place rather than going to different places and creating this chaos in your organization. So you can create those. The second Excel sheet in that particular slide communicates, what are the sub use cases and how you would prioritize that. The third one is more technical. What are the sources of the data? So that's what it communicates. So basically, a tool like this, where it helped our organizations, the organization we work with, to see from the upstream standpoint the business use cases and prioritize them effectively, and also break it down into smaller chunks. Go to the team level and figuring out the technical aspects. And if it's too difficult, you don't want to have a KPI that is very high effort, it's a complicated thing to pull the data, but the value is very little. You don't want to do that. It's not going to, it's not going to have a good ROI. And so I would focus on the high value and any low-hanging fruits kind of effort. And also, if the high value is there, you can always spend more time and increase the difficulty of the task to deliver that value, given to your teams. Moving on to the next slide, please. And then, like I said earlier, how to get started, $1 million question. A lot of our organizations, manufacturing organization in particular, they focus on creating widgets. They're not on for us, for example, SSR, we are, at the forefront of technology. We constantly learning about what's happening in the data front. So, the customers work with us to, we help the customers to understand where they are, where they need to go. As you can see in the screen, this is something, we kind of reuse Gartner's maturity model. I've used this one in different contexts, not just for the data, not just for the BI. This can be used in an operational maturity or a product maturity. You can create, actually, what we do is we work with our customers to create their own version of maturity model, because we don't want to be a Gartner centric. We want to be, because you have your own business plan and goals. So create your own maturity model and define. First step is identify where you are, and then start creating, 3 or 4 things that you want to improve as your next step, and create a roadmap and the things that you need to accomplish and reach the next level. And that's what we work with our customers to create this plan and also help them get to the next step. Next slide, please. To bring everything together, how to get started. So I would say, what we have done with other customers and internally and in my past lives is basically 5-step process. Number one, define the value proposition. I think a lot of people that we work with, they call us and say, you know what, Raj, can you go ahead and create this KPI for me? I have this KPI, just go create some automation and so that my team can see it. I think, if we take that approach, there's no buy-in, there is no accountability, there's no cultural change. It's just something coming from upstream. And what we do is we work with those the customers and make them understand the why aspect, why we need to do this. Maybe the KPI that person reached out to me, things going to improve is not the right value they should track. So part of the why aspect, understanding, focus on accountability and transparency. The process improvement, is it going to improve the process? The main thing is it going to improve the internal external challenge? Is it going to solve an internal or external challenge? If you talk about external challenge, the example I can give is, when you work with customers, the positive user experience score, the customer score, they give on a yearly basis or quarterly basis, if the score is low, what can I do as a team to improve that score can be a good why aspect. That helps from downstream to upstream play a role in creating a positive experience. The next one is asking the right to define the value proposition. Understanding the current state. It goes back to the previous slide where we talked about the maturity model. Part of that exercise, you're going to understand where you are and define what is going to be for my company, what is the next state, and come up with a list of 4 or 5 things to do to get to the next state. So it should be custom, in my opinion. You cannot just copy some other company, because everybody has a different business goals. Everybody has a different, the overall business plan to execute, template, but you have to create your own. Get your data in order. This is where we talk about, bringing the ERP data in one place, automating the data in a way that we have the single source. The Power BI is a very powerful tool. I'm sure you heard about it. Power BI is continuously evolving and going to the next stages of AI and other things. Future sessions we'll talk about these things, about the advanced version of what are the other things happening in the industry. For today, I think the focus will be on data integration, automation, getting the right technology, that falls under this, getting your data in order. The third thing is bring your data. I think, if you ask me the real value, it's about bringing that value to the forefront. Looking at 3 months old data or 1 month old data is, it's more about looking at a report. I think where the industry is going is, okay, that's good, but can I see the future? What can I read from this data? What kind of things I can learn from this in advance so that I don't make this 3 months down the road? That's where the industry is going, and the KPIs and the data translating into more of a follow-up action the business needs to take to pivot. The keys to success are, moving into the fourth one, implementation, communication, and training. This is where a lot of organizations, that includes SSR, we all struggle. We have this vision, we have this fancy tool, we have fancy dashboards. Where we all struggle is implementing it, making everyone adopting it, and start making that cultural change in an organization is the difficult thing. And that's where the repeat, you gotta, that's where the fifth thing comes, continuous improvement. So maybe you start with the finance team and start that process and learn that experience and then use that finance manager as your proponent of positive change. Use that person to sell that to other organization, to make it a journey and have other teams learn from it and adapt to that their best practices and create their own dashboards, and then overall take it back to the company level and create this high-level scorecard for an organizational level to continue the journey. So I'm a strong believer of continuous improvement, and we do that at SSR. And I work with our customers and coach our organizations that we work with on the value of continuous learning. Moving on to the final slide, that is about overall summary. I think this is more self-explanatory. I'm not going to go deep into this because of the time. I'm going to pause here and take it over, Katie.
Sure. Well, thank you, Raj. That was a lot of great information. We'll now move into the question and conversation portion of this session. And you can continue to post your questions into the chat. We have a few that we can cover right now. And then if you would like to either clarify or ask a question, you can feel free to unmute yourself and just ask Raj directly. So Raj, one of the questions that I have here is how do you justify whose KPIs are done first? And I'm thinking that means like from a development standpoint, like which department how do you decide which one to tackle first?
No, it's a great question. So I think it goes back to the way I've done, the way we work with the customers is it goes back to your company business goals and priorities. And I would align that, I would align that with the main overarching goals and tie that back. So let's say, every organization starts with sales as the number one, right? But it can be different for different organizations. So it goes back to how they started the year. And if the customer service sucks, that's the one thing they wanted to improve as a number one thing, then I would start with that. So the way it goes back to as an organization, how did you guys prioritize to start? Where do you want to start? And that's where I would go back to start that process.
Okay, this is kind of a good tangent to that question as well. So it's asking, what if our data is not in order? What's your approach in that, in the hot mess of data situation, Raj?
So basically, to be honest with you, every organization we work with that includes SSR, it's not perfect. We find a way to bring the things together and make sense of it. So if it's going to have chaos. So we work with a few customers to bring some order in their data by automation and integration. So the step one of that process is, we start with a basic analysis to understand, what are their business goals and the priorities are. It always goes back to that. And we tie that back to the data they already have. And we go back to the customers on our recommendation on, based on their priorities, based on their budget, available budget, here's the way we can approach. It doesn't need to be perfect, like I said earlier, but it needs to start with a roadmap. We help them create a roadmap in a way that it can start with a basic Excel sheet to start with, create a dashboard out of it, and then eventually bring the data in one place, and then start using tools like Power BI to get it done.
Okay. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, so this one says, can you give me the KPIs of what measures I should be managing?
So, okay, if I understood the question, can you give me the KPIs of what measure I should be managing? I think this is, again, goes back to it's like individual company level. Mm-hmm. So, I can't just give you something without understanding what your business goals are and what your priorities for the year. I think it's probably one of our team conversation. We can always, follow up call, or we can set up we can get the information we'll follow up and get that set up a meeting to talk through this, because this is an individual conversation. This is not like a general. So that would be my response to that.
All right. That makes sense. This one asks, should I pilot this in Excel before picking a BI platform? So should we take a baby step and then go big, or how should it get started?
Exactly. So I think I touched this earlier too, right? It goes back to your available budget. The key aspect is, understanding, what we want to get done and getting the buy-in from the leadership team. For that, the answer is probably yes. Even a simple Excel sheet, the factory example I gave, the tour I took, how that the factory operation manager started with a simple whiteboard to start tracking the data. And then he moved to Excel sheet. And then finally he moved to a dashboard that is automatic and stuff. So you got to start somewhere and then start showing the value. I think that's the key. Once you start, because that's what I'm saying, the other example I shared is the Milwaukee customer, a customer in Milwaukee, the president of the organization understood the value now. That's why he's expanding to other area of business now.
Okay. We have time for one or two more, and this is probably a good one that others might have too. It's about ERP. I have an ERP and don't know where the data is stored. Do I have to contact the vendor, or can you help?
A great question. Yes, we can help. This short answer is we have both scenarios, right? Because we, like I said, our team comprised of, we have people with a lot of industry experience working on different ERP vendors. Mm-hmm. So we have exposure to the ERPs. We worked through customers on an ERP engagement. Also, we directly work with ERP vendors too. Mm-hmm. So we have both experience. Yes, we can help on that.
Okay, I think this is a really good one to end on, actually. So last question, if you have additional questions that you'd like to ask Raj, I'm just going to flip over to his contact information so you can write it down and contact him. You can also find his profile and contact information on ssrtotalit.com. So as we kind of wrap up with this last question, it says, getting your data in order, should it work on everything needed or pick a small subset? So what's that first step, Raj?
Yeah. So, I used to be a developer. So I'm going to just relate to that example. The first thing they teach you when you're coding is hello world. So create a program that says hello world. It's a simple program. It can be 10-line code that says hello world in a screen. That's what we start with. So answer to this question is yes, I would start with a small subset. And again, I want to go back to the main thing. Even a subset, focus on the high priority issue and tie that to the return on investment so that you have the stakeholders and the team members buying into that so that they can expand that. Getting an investment for BI, this is the way to get done. Mm-hmm. You can't start with $1 million project. You have to start with a smaller subset.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Raj, and thank you all for joining our webinar today. Like I mentioned before, we will send you the recording of the presentation as well as the slides before the end of the week. And if you have any additional questions, Raj's contact information is up on the screen now, and it's also available on ssrtotalit.com. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you at our next TechBytes event.
Thank you.